Welcome to the IT Experience Podcast. The largest IT experience management event, ITXM Summit 2026 is back. We are hosting it this year on the 5th of May in London. The seats are limited. Please register at happysignals.com. Now on with the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Meet the Practitioner. Today I'm joined by Frank Fütz from Aldi, and today we're going to explore some of the key areas associated with IT experience management. So let's jump straight in. So Frank, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about your path into IT service management, ITSM, and your eventual trip into ITXM, IT experience management.
Yeah, happy to do so. Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Frank. I work as an IT manager at Aldi South. My focus is on IT service management, but also IT experience management. I think we'll come to that later. My role, I'm responsible for ensuring the quality of our core IT operations processes, basically across our whole portfolio of over 600 IT products. And I mean, if you don't know Aldi South, we're a global grocery retailer with more than 7,000 stores and over 180,000 employees operating in 11 countries across the globe. Before I joined Aldi, I worked at PwC and IBM as a consultant in digital transformation projects, also on IT operating model design. And next to my job, I also do a part-time executive MBA at London Business School. So you may think I'm a bit bored or have too much free time, and that's why I do this kind of podcast here. But no, it's a really great experience. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, and what personally drives me most is really working at the intersection of technology and people. And I truly believe IT should not just exist for its own sake, but really to make our lives better. And that's how I ended up in the job I'm doing. And I think, Mark, you asked about how I got into IT service management, right?
Yeah, into ITSM, and most
Right.
people go into ITSM first, then end up falling into ITXM. Yeah, it can be a thought out decision. You have to do it, but sometimes we just fall into that. Wondered how you got into ITSM and ITXM.
Yeah, that was for me quite similar. I think going into IT service management was for me a bit different, I think, than for most people. So I think a lot of people come from an infrastructure or service desk background. I actually came to IT service management more from a broader background in IT operating model design. So I was working, as mentioned, as a consultant at PwC in the area of CIO advisory. And my focus was more on agile delivery and IT project management. But I actually saw that ITSM provides a quite nice coherent layer that ties together all the different disciplines. So development, operations, strategy, governance around it. And I really like that it also spans across like the pure development and getting features out there. And also looks into best practices for operations, because I think that's where the value is generated when users are actually using a product. And I worked in IT service management in different areas, mostly as a process owner, in demand management, testing, release, also areas of service design and strategy. And I also work a lot of in integrating processes within our central ITSM platform. How I then jumped into IT experience management was mainly when I was leading a team of process owners in the area of service design. And one of my key tasks was to improve the SLA management and actually make it reflect the actual business perception, which back then wasn't really positive, although the numbers suggested the performance is really great. And early in the project, my boss sent me a Gartner article. And I always love when he does that, right? So 9 out of 10 times, it's a nice thought, but not really super relevant to the actual project. So I prepared myself for some argument maybe about this. But I mean, you want to stay curious. So I went through it, and it was about something like called XLAs, experience level agreements. And my thought was, okay, great, another marketing buzzwords to get some money out of big corporations. But as I read more, I realized it could address our core problem. So our SLAs were green, but the business was generally unhappy. And we followed up by doing some more research, evaluate some software vendors to really get it practical and go beyond just the pure theory. And we decided to go with one partner. We did a concept and a pilot, and the results were eye-opening. So we could really see how people feel about the solutions. and go beyond this just technical and operational KPIs. And that opened up really huge potential for improvement. And now 3 years later, we're still doing it. We're expanding it. And I think it's a great way to go and great topic.
You've just reminded me of one thing, something I should have had in my hand before we started this. 1 second. I always have one just close by. You had one of these, right? You had that watermelon. We've all heard about the watermelon. Yep. That's exactly what
I have it. Yeah.
So you have one of these too, but you had the watermelon effect inside Aldi, and that's a good.
I used to yeah. Yeah, I really like to use it in workshops and throw it around, like in school where everyone gets the ball and they're allowed to speak.
Exactly.
So it also has some practical use for me.
There we go. So that's so your story there, Frank, was predominantly about this. You had this watermelon effect and you needed to find a way out of it. Right. Okay. Good.
100%.
Wonderful. Okay. So the next obvious question then is I think you talked about it a little bit anyway, but why is IT experience management so important to you as a person?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think ITXM is really crucial because traditional metrics will often fail to reflect what users actually experience. And I mean, in other words, more simply put, we're letting them suffer a lot without even knowing about it. And if I speak from my own experience, so take a typical workday. So I get up, take a shower, grab a coffee, and then start my notebook. And it literally takes 10 minutes before it's fully booted. And then comes the daily five with VPN connections, authentication tools. And later on, I ran into some application issues, have to raise an incident. It's only affecting me or part of my team. So the SLAs tells me, but can take several days for resolution, and it's still good. And I mean, then you can prepare yourself for some escalations or project issues. And it really felt like IT has been created to torture me for some sins I've done or something like that. And I think what's really striking about is that all this frustration, it's not really visible in traditional IT dashboards. And from a classical KPI perspective, everything looks green and the users are losing time, energy, focus, happiness. And I mean, what's more important for the business itself, a lot of productivity. Yeah. I think that's why ITXM is so important, because it helps you capture this experience and then really work on improving it. And I mean, it's not only to make people happy, but I think it really has a clear impact on productivity and business performance. That's why I think it should be in the center of every IT management system.
Absolutely agree. And I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday about the fact that in our personal lives, we have really high expectations now, right? So I made the example, I can order something when I'm having my breakfast and my sort of second cup of coffee, it's almost at your door, right? Whereas if you get a stuck order somewhere in a process or you need to order a work laptop, it takes days, if not weeks, to turn up. So we have this perception now that things have to be really quick. People are used to it being quick at home. They're used to the laptop performance at home being far better than the laptop performance in the office. So I know there's more complexity in the workplace, but that's what people are comparing things to. So yeah, it's a very good point. So in terms of
I like that part, and also like that you mentioned, Mark, that the user use a bit of willingness to live every time this happens, right? I think a lot of us can relate to it.
Yeah, you lose a bit of that will to live when everything's been set up to make you wait, right? It's that waiting game that no one really likes. I'm a really impatient person, so I can well understand why people get frustrated with it. So you talked a bit about SLAs and KPIs, and we've been doing a lot of work at the moment on CSAT as well. You know, the sort of 5-star rating, the thumbs up, the thumbs down, whatever. So what clearly the conversation we've had leads us towards that they're not enough. Yeah, they're not enough. They're not sufficient. Is that how you feel that those things are really not where they need to be? They're not. They certainly didn't sound like they were giving Aldi enough.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I mean, we used CSAT at Aldi also before. So for every incident handled by our service desk, we send kind of a CSAT service out there to the users. Mm-hmm. And also the team was working on it to some extent, but the response rates were really low, so below 3%. And I think the core thing is we didn't really have like a strategy behind it, and also not a. And I think that's really important. We didn't have a good data representation. No great dashboards to work with it. And I asked some business leaders, like, do you even know that we run this service? And they said, no, no clue. Although their people were answering it. And I think that changed really significantly when we introduced an ITXM platform. And I think it's not only about how it's calculated, but really the whole thing behind it, the communication, the process, also the motivation with which we're now driving it. And I think that also ties together to have a good platform, which is also visually appealing. And now everybody's talking about it. So we really make a lot of progress there.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
When it comes to SLAs and KPIs, we also have quite plenty of them still, but we now use them in a better way. So we used to just like optimize them for the reason of optimizing it, but now we're linking it more to the user experience. So, I mean, you can improve a KPI as much as you want, but it might not have a impact back on the experience. And that connection was really missing for us. And now we can actually do it the other way around. So we look at the experience, we see what is maybe not working. So maybe some users have a specific issue with a service and the support for it. And then we can have a look at the SLAs and KPIs and drill down and try to understand what might be the reason. Is there maybe longer resolutions for this kind of user group? And then we can have a better look on how to have actually an impact on their experience. I think that's the right way of doing it, and not just optimizing KPIs to optimize them.
Yeah, I agree, and I think often the KPIs tell us how the performance of the teams are in a way, in some way, shape, or form, but actually it doesn't really reflect well with how the employees are feeling something. The old put a ticket on hold and the clock stops sort of thing, right? Seen before. But I think I remember being in Germany with you, and we talked about those linking the KPIs and SLAs, specifically the KPIs, to the experience you want, whether it be happiness, lost time, whether it be good support, whether it be good laptops, whatever it might be, those things that build up the foundations to get to that. So yeah, I think I agree with you. I think they're still useful, but they have a different use now. You know, they're looked at and worked on in a different way, not just for the sake of having a KPI. You know, I'm 30 KPIs, which somehow
Yeah.
tell us how things are working, but don't really tell us how the employees are feeling things. No, I agree.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, Mark, so everyone is talking about new ways of working and getting people to work in an autonomous way. I think you also need the right KPIs for it. So if you torture them with all the small KPIs and improve this thing a bit and that thing a bit, it's not giving the freedom they need to really find purpose in their work and change something. And if you put in experience KPI or experience targets to the teams, I think that it's more self-determined on how to approach this. And I think it gives a better frame also for the modern ways of working we all want to implement.
Yeah, and I think you come on to a good point that my experience, having been a practitioner of it back in 2018 when I started in another company, it changes your way of work. It changes your mindset to think of these things that we've had for 20, 30 years that really haven't changed much at all. It 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 makes us think of them in a much different way. You know, your method of working becomes more about how the employees feel and how much lost time they're having or productivity loss than actually the KPIs. They almost become secondary. I'm going to say that very carefully, right? Because they're very important contractually. They're very important as well, but they become secondary to that employee experience. Or at least it did for me. You know, at one point I was going to ditch all. I mean, it'd have been reckless. Ditch all KPIs, right, in favor of one big experience one, which is make my employees happy. Third party service provider, right? That would have been easy to do, but actually it'd have gone too far. You wouldn't have really. You need those little levers to see what's going on. Great. Okay. So you've been this IT experience management practitioner for a little while now. Could you share a couple of practical ways that you're using ITXM today, and maybe a couple of examples of what you changed because of it?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. And I think one of the toughest challenge we had before, and I mean we still have it to some extent, is turning all this valuable user experience data into actual practical actions. And we always fear this kind of survey fatigue. I think that's like the death to it all, right? When people get asked for feedback repeatedly, but they don't see any changes and they stop responding. It's a bit like my grandmother always said, like, the one who lies once will never be trusted again, even though he may speak the truth. It sounds a bit better in German because it rhymes, but I think you get the idea.
Not the idea.
And I mean, I'm really happy that we actually changed something in that regard. So we with one pilot area, and I mean we did it together, Mark. So you can remember that probably quite well. We looked into the warehouse management department, and which is a critical part of our value chain. And we use the data and coach them on really how IT experience management, what it's about, and what they can see from the data. And now they actually take it and embrace this data and put it into their regularly prioritization process. So they every quarter they look into their prioritization list and see what to work on as an IT department. And now they look also at the experience data and say like, okay, let's try to connect it. And I think what's really, really important is that they also communicate it back to the users and say like, hey, we saw you said this and this in the experience data. For example, we saw they had a bit of issue with the request management. So all this like generic request coming without any further template or purpose. They took a bit long and were not that well worked on. And now they said like, okay, let's go on and we try to implement 3 or 4 more standard service requests to improve the user experience. And I think that's really important to not only see this and work on it, but also to communicate that you're about to do it. And then also when you finish that. So that was really, really a great success story we had. And I think what is even more important now is re-rolling out this whole approach to the entire organization. So last week and this week, we actually had a great kickoff session with almost 50 IT experience coordinators, which we have nominated across all the business units and product lines. And we want to scale this to actually cover every area of our business. And they now drive the adoption of IT experience management and make sure that every product looks into it and acts up on the feedback and is also communicating about it. And I think that's super critical to keep it alive and further expand it. And for me, it's a bit like starting back 3 years ago. For me, it's a really bit like a dream came true now with this initiative.
Yeah, and I think there's always that fear when you start working in IXM. I need an army of people to do this. Well, actually, you've not gone out and hired 50 more people, right? You've just seeing if they can morph their way of working, right? No one can afford to go and employ 50 more people, but they can say, here's something you need to look at, right? And here's something you need to take interest in. And honestly, if it's in their area of interest and focus and control, then they should want to know how people feel about their services. So great. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that pans out, really. That would be great. Wonderful.
Yeah, maybe add to that. So I get often asked, like, as you said, like, how much additional effort is it to work on this? And I always said, like, I mean, I would expect you to already work on it. So for me, from a product owner perspective, or someone like who's owning the whole department, like how users experience their products, I think that is one of the most essential things you can work on and manage. And that's why I always say, like, I can tell you how much extra effort it is if you don't do it. But if you don't do it, I think that is a more important issue than getting the resources to do it.
I would agree, and I think there's two things that I think of there. I had a chat with one of our Australian customers once and asked the same question around how much effort is this, and they said it's effort, but it's good effort, and it's the effort you should have been doing anyway, right? This is not, and that leads me on to another line that I always talk about, and when I'm presenting on an event this week actually, and one of my strap lines on the bottom of one of my slides is no cartwheels needed down the corridors, just operational goodness. You know, asking for anything special like cartwheels in the corridor, you just get people to do their job, right? You know, and caring for the employees or the users of your services is a big part of doing your job, in my opinion. You know, and I guess when we go and talk to people about this, and they say, "Oh, I'm not sure about this." It's almost like, well, why wouldn't you want to do this, right? You know, if you own the laptops and computers in your organization,
that's right.
why do you care if they're costing people 30 hours a month in lost time and people are really unhappy with them? Why would you not want to know that? Is it the fear of having to do a load of work because of it? Maybe, but in the end, it needs to be done, right? So no, I think you're absolutely right on that front, and there's some good practical examples there. So clearly, with getting feedback, you can get thousands of bits of feedback, right? And I'm sure you've had some humdingers there, right? Some real fun ones, some real tough ones. So any sort of examples of feedback where you've sat and winced a bit and thought, oh God, I wish we didn't get that feedback, or there's something that made you smile, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, and I think it's really hard to pick just one. I think last year we received like 10,000 free text comments. I think 40, 50,000 satisfaction scores overall, but I mean 1/4, 1/5 of them actually put the effort in to write some comments to us as well. And people they don't just give 1 or 2 word answers, but they really put a lot of thought and detail into this. And sometimes it feels like reading a thesis, right? So they put in so much thought on how things could be improved, and I think I really love reading that. And I think one story I would like to share is about our IT equipment, particularly the laptops. So we set up a survey for that, and initially the feedback was really brutally honest and sometimes even a bit harsh. And I always laugh when people write their feedback in caps lock to kind of shout at you from their computer,
Yeah.
show all the emotions behind it. And but I must say, in most cases, colleagues are very friendly and polite. So they would say like, "Oh, it's all crap. You have to change everything. I hate it. Please work on it, and thank you in advance." So I must say, really rarely cases the feedback is not kind of a bit softened, especially when it's regarding actual people. But I mean, I couldn't blame them. I wasn't happy with my laptop either. And actually, after we introduced or we analyzed that, I mean, the refresh was already planned, to be honest, but kind of this initiative tweaked it a bit on how we set it up and also on the timeline. So we did it a bit faster than initially planned. And after we introduced the new models, actually the happiness score jumped by over 100 points, which I think is absurd. I mean, it will tell you from where we came, so quite a low basis. But still, it was really, really a great accomplishment. And of course, there's also some honeymoon effect behind it. But I think the thing that's really important, you could generally see the smiles on the colleagues' faces when they received their new equipment. And I mean, it was for me as well. I came into the office, it's like, hey guys, look at me, I got the new model, and you kind of brag a bit around it. I think that's what it's all about, right? It's not about IT itself and getting new things in there, but it's really about improving people's life with the technology, making them more happy, and I mean, more broader context, also more productive in the end.
No, totally agree with you. And I think going back to what you said, you sometimes get War and Peace written, right, about what people think about their devices or whatever the ticket that they were feeding back on. So they're putting all the effort in. It's almost criminal to do nothing with it, right? It's I've always said if
Yeah,
you're not
it is. Yeah.
with the data, don't ask them in the first place, because I think going back to your comment on survey fatigue, that is a real risk, right? And I think it was McKinsey who did a
It is.
report
Yeah.
said that if you do the biggest reason for survey fatigue is doing nothing with the data. I give up on surveys from my doctor's surgery, for example, or from the car dealership where I take it for a service, because I know nothing will change. So don't even ask me for it in the first place, right? So that's how I feel about it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
great.
It's super important. And sometimes I hunt down the people if I see that they have a lot of feedback and it's somehow not worked on. I think it's such a waste, right? Because also people, I mean, even just like going into the interaction and communicating is improving things. So people just want to get a feedback. They want to see that someone is actually taking them seriously, works on it. They don't expect you to solve everything. I think we sometimes had, or one time we even had a communication which said like, yeah, we got all your feedback, but we can't improve it. It's a software as a service application. We don't know how to scale the performance at the moment. So we will look into it, but don't expect anything soon. But at least it gets you into a dialogue, right? And I think that's what is also important and makes it transparent.
Yeah, at least it's something. At least you've acknowledged that they've given you feedback, and it's it's very, very important. I can't explain enough that things like another simple example is when people come back on their ticket and say the reason why I've given you a 0 score is because you didn't fix my issue. You know, the very simple approach there is just to reopen the ticket, right? You don't have to muck about listening to phone calls and reading endless reams of notes. Just reopen the ticket. At least they know someone's listened. The ticket's been reopened.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Conversation. It's so, these simple things are sometimes the biggest changes you can make, really, in their eyes, right? So, no, it's a very good point. So we draw closure of this podcast, and really, Frank, any final thoughts? Any final thoughts on this? The whole of the ITXM piece we've just talked about. Any final views or thoughts? Things you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I think that's important. Is that actually working on IT experience management? I think I said that before. For me, it should be the center and the focus of every IT management system, because in the end, what is IT about, right? It's about increasing the productivity of a business, increasing business opportunities, all these kind of things, while keeping reasonable costs. So of course you have to view this as well. But all the more traditional KPIs, they have some valid ground, but they don't are neatly tied to all these business goals. And I think experience management is actually bridging that gap. So it gives you a better feeling on how your IT is performing, and eventually leads also to better results. So it's not only something which I think from a human perspective is a great thing to work on, because it's important to have a positive impact of the lives on others. But I think also from a pure business perspective, it's a super critical and important topic. And I think it's the future on how to manage IT.
I would agree. It just makes sense, doesn't it? I probably in my mind thinking how it doesn't make sense, and I think I'm not sure why everyone's just not doing it yet. There's obviously a lot of people doing it, but this belief that just getting a smiley face is enough, it really isn't. You need to change your way of working. You need to take this information and grasp it and do something with it, because it's all rich. It's all given to you on a plate. You've got all the information. You just need to do something. Okay, so we draw a close to this podcast today. I've really enjoyed the conversation with you, Frank. Thank you so much for being on the call with us and sharing your wisdom and your thoughts on ITXM.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was a pleasure.
Excellent. And before I go, thank you, Frank. We also have an ITXM Summit happening at Tobacco Dock in London on the 5th of May. All details of that can be found on our website. Please register and get yourselves along to have a chat about ITXM.
If you liked this episode, please give us thumbs up, rating, or share it with your colleagues to help others learn about this topic as well. To learn more, go to happysignals.com.